Streets and Scholars, Alex Alonso and FG, here to bring you guys another banger. And I'm here with the Eastside General, as always, every week. What's up, FG?
Man, what's going on with you, Alex?
And I'm just sitting here going through our topics for the day, man. And it's actually it's been a real busy week in the news, from politics to criminal justice to hip hop. It's a little bit of everything going on, man. Have you been trying to keep up with all the neuse?
No doubt. It's floating across my phone, floating across Instagram. It's a lot going on right now, bro.
It is. Sometimes when I be trying to prepare for the podcast, I'm like, damn, this has been a boring week. There ain't really nothing to talk about. But man, there's so much, but not enough time. But first, I want to do a fact check from the episode I did with Spider Loke. We talked about Eric Holder getting sentenced to 60 to life. And we were trying to determine what his release date would be, at least his eligibility release date. Mm-hmm. And I just basically calculated 85%, came up with 51 years. He has 4 years credit, and I came up with the year 2070. And it turns out that now that he hit the CDC publishes your eligibility date, and they have him down as eligible for parole in 2039. So that's really just 20 years after the incident. He shot and killed Nipsey in 2019. And he's eligible for parole in 2039, just 20 years. And I'm a little confused because I know that on a violent crime in the state of California, you got to do 85%. But apparently they're letting him be eligible after just 20 years. You know anything about why such a short term before he's eligible for parole?
I don't. That's not even 50%.
I think I calculated like less than 40% he's eligible for parole.
Right. No, I'm unclear on that. It's nothing for me to say. I'm unclear on that, Alex. I don't know.
I think a lot of people are going to be disappointed to find out he's eligible for parole in 2039, just 20 years later. A lot of people were happy he got that 60 that were Nipsey fans, but I'm here to tell y'all that he's eligible for parole in what's that from now? 16. Let's see, 23, 3, 9 minus 3, 16. It looks like about 16 years from now, right? What's 2039? 2039, 39 minus 23, that's 16. He's eligible for parole in 16 years, y'all, based on the CDC.
Wow. It could change though, Alex. Sometimes you get to reception, and the reception may not have certain paperwork. It could change. Could just be a flaw in the system, or somebody typed something in wrong. But yeah, that's wild. We're going to keep an eye on that just to see if it do change, or if we hear anything about why it's like that.
Well, he just hit reception about a week ago. And he is in what's commonly referred to as Delano. I'm sure you've heard about Delano.
Yeah.
You've hit reception a couple times in the state back in the day. Technically, that prison is called North Kern State Prison, and he's supposed to be there for 90 days. Can you just give the listeners a brief little understanding of what reception is all about?
Reception is basically a processing center. They're going to get him in. It's still prison, and it's still a prison. That prison have other yards. I got a little homie up there on another yard up there in Delano. But what's going to happen is, he's not going to have a full range of being able to move around. He's not going to be out on the yard with, the general population, just based on that's not what reception is for. It's basically a classification situation where they're going to classify you, go over all your medical, go over your background, and determine what prison do they want to send you to. His situation, he may have something in his file where they may take extra precaution on where they send him to. He may not. But at the same time, like I say, reception is just classification to see what prison you're going to land at to start doing your time.
And even though it's reception, like you said, it's still prison, and anything can go up at reception, right? Do they have like I'm assuming they probably got some PC sections for reception and general population sections for reception.
Now, see, that's the difference of nowadays of going to prison. They didn't have the PC sections like they do now. I'm sure they had places where they put certain individuals, but now it's mass PC yards. When I came through reception, I came through Tehachapi. And Tehachapi was a no-nonsense prison back then in the 90s. I did. I went to the 4-yard, to the 4B gym, where they housed us at. We didn't get to function with the the inmates on the 4-yard like that. I mean, I saw Bolo in the kitchen, OG Bolo from Bonnie Hunters in the kitchen. You know, I ran into the big homie Sonny Roo from AM. So it was some contact, but it was limited, you know. And it wasn't until I got to the 3-yard at Tehachapi where you got to see the full prison experience, you know. And but at the same time in reception, it can go down. It's not gonna go down to the physicality of the inmates living on the 4-yard, but at any time you got some inmates in any situation, it can move.
Do you recall if it actually took the whole 90 days for you to get classified when you were there back in the day?
It didn't. It took me probably about 35 days. I was there about 35 days before they moved me around. So it don't necessarily take 90 days. I believe it can take up to 90 days. And I have seen homies in there 90 days, 100 days before they were moved. You know, being that, you know, California prisons are so crowded and overpopulated, you know, I think the wheels are moving a little slower. In his situation, though, they may, because his situation is a high profile one, they may choose to kind of expedite his movement to go and get him on the yard so they don't got to worry about it. But then again, they might just treat him like a regular dude. Don't give a shit who he is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the way they're supposed to do it. But I understand they got them high profiles. I remember hearing about Charles Manson when he was in there. They had him under heavy protection everywhere he went. You couldn't touch Charles Manson even if you wanted to. But I don't know. You think they might give Eric Holder that same treatment?
No, but I don't think they're going to not understand, you know, who he is. I believe it's something in his file that's going to say that he may be a wanted man in prison. You know, maybe some kind of red flag to say, you know, this guy right here needs some, not extra protection, but an extra understanding of, you know, it could go up with this dude at any moment, you know, and those things are in place, you know, so they could definitely, have him over there in Delano. Like I say, he's already not functioning with everybody because they don't move like that in reception. But at the same time, somebody got action at him. Prison is too big and they don't have the means to just babysit you like that. So he's definitely going to be in some form of a population, whether it's a PC pop or a gym pop, but he's definitely going to be around some other inmates.
Now, the CDC in recent years has claimed that they're taking mental illness into serious consideration. And during his sentencing, the defense was able to document like years and years of mental illness and treatment and 5150 holds. I know when you was in prison, or maybe I'm wrong, did they even consider some of the inmates that had mental health issues the way they're claiming that they're considering them today?
Unless you had a super serious, and I mean serious case of mental illness where you just really wasn't there, you know, they took that into consideration. But just like, you know, when I played Pop Warner football, there wasn't a such thing as concussions, you know, and it was the same thing in the PM, man. There wasn't no such thing as mental illness. You know, they felt like everybody in this thing was crazy, man. When I go back and look, it's really some dudes that really should have been on another yard or in a different situation because of their mental illness, but they just didn't classify like that then. At the same time, you know, this dude could be classified with a mental illness, but we all know that he can function properly. You know what I mean? You know, after I seen him take a bite of them fries after right before he went to go gun down Nip, this dude thinks, you know, he can think clearly. You know what I mean? So he's not going to be in no severe situation where they have to classify him as a mental patient, you know. And if they did, you know, send him up to one of them facilities like Vacaville or somewhere where they house these like serious mental dudes, I think he'd probably go crazy just even being up there with them guys because they really have issues. Other than that, man, like I said, he gonna land somewhere where all the other motherfuckers in his temperament is. He ain't gonna get no special treatment, man.
Wait up! I can't believe you said the way he bit those chili cheese fries.
Yeah,
you're diminishing the level of mental illness that he has based on his demeanor walking through that alley before he shot Nipsey.
No doubt, bro. You know.
Why so?
Hey, man, it just shows you a level of calm, coolness, collectiveness. You know, see, one thing when I watch a crime or watch something on TV or watch it unfold in real life, you know, I pay attention to the small details. You know, I pay attention to, because some dudes really do things out of adrenaline. Some guys really be scared and they get the job done, but you could tell they were scared, they nervous, you know. This dude was thinking clearly, you know what I mean? And nothing about him showed me that he couldn't understand, man. And like I say, his brain told him, go put in his work, and his stomach told him, man, let's eat a little more, man. Let's get a couple more bites. And so, even just with that, man, like I say, that did something for me. I say, this boy a cold rider. This boy a killer right here, man,
Okay, but let me flip it around. I think that if you're about to put in some work and you're about to do your thing, you should be nervous naturally. If you do it as calm and as collected as Eric Holder actually did, maybe that is evidence of severe mental illness. Like you said, this dude was enjoying the last bites of his meal before he was about to bust 2 straps into one of the most famous LA rappers. I think 90% of the people that would go on a mission like that would naturally be nervous. He wasn't at all. He wasn't at all.
I can feel you, but I look at it different. You know what I mean? I look at everybody else would have been nervous, and them riders, homie, that knowing what they finna go accomplish, knowing that they've done this before. I mean, like I say, I don't know the dude personally, so I don't want to accuse him of anything. But just from me looking in, I would definitely say this wasn't his first rodeo. This wasn't his first time popping his pistol. You know what I mean? So, and he could, like I say, and he had a full understanding of what was going on. Maybe the last time he shot somebody, he didn't get to eat before, so he was hungry afterwards while he went to go lay low. So this time he was like, I'm not going to be hungry after I shoot this dude, so it showed me a different level about him, that I, saw in him, so that's how I got it.
Yeah, I think that footage of him walking through the alley right before he's going to shoot Nipsey is very unique, because very rarely do we see a guy like, minutes before he's about to do something and get to see his demeanor and his body language. And in this case, actually got to show you exactly all his body language. And I guess if you're reading that in a certain kind of way, yeah, you can come to these type of conclusions. But I feel what you're saying. I guess if you're a rider, that's the way you're supposed to do it, right?
Hey, I mean, to be honest with you, I hated it was Nip, but at the same time, man, just from, a gangster perspective, he done had no hitch in his giddy up, man, so he gonna be, I don't think the mental role is gonna play for the CDC.
See, I remember Jay Stone from Fruittown, Piru, talking about when he went to prison for a shooting he did in Compton with one of his comrades from the same set. He said that dude froze up when they went to go do their thing, and he looked at him and he was like surprised. But I'm thinking to myself, I'm sure a lot of dudes freeze up. I'm sure a lot of dudes lock up, and I think that nervousness you have before you're about to pull the trigger, to me, is a natural response.
No doubt. I mean, I'm seeing it personally, Alex, and but I also had to go let the homie know that, I'm talking about even in self-defense mode, somebody come through, ride on you, get ready to bust on you, and the homie got the strap and he need to bust back, you know what I mean? And I've seen homies freeze. I've seen them, pause. I've seen them, didn't perform the way they should have, and I always was the one who doubled back while I was, it's always going to be homies clown you and talk shit about the dude, I'm going to go double back, and homie, I understand, you know what I mean? This shit is unnormal, you know what I mean? So at the same time, give a dude, don't send him home, beating himself up or, nothing like that. Just understand, man, that this shit is not normal, bro. You know what I mean? So I've seen it on multiple occasions where dudes freeze up. And so you're absolutely right. A lot of motherfuckers will. Everybody ain't, they think they ready and they not. But this is something that you shouldn't be fucking ready for,
Well, I think that also, as you stated, that it looked like this wasn't his first rodeo. So the more you do it, if the second, the third, and fourth time, it probably becomes a little bit easier. You get a little bit more comfortable. Then butterflies in your stomach probably aren't as aggressive. So perhaps, depending on if this is your first time ever having to put in some work, that might determine your level of nervousness.
Right. And I'm going to go beyond and say, not your first time. I'm going to say your 10th time, because it comes with anything you do, dangerous, whether it's skydiving, whether it's, popping a wheelie on the dirt bike or, something like that. The first few times you do it, you're going to be nervous. It takes a while for you to do anything that's crazy, and it could be crazy legally, like I say, skydiving or, something like that. Or, it's not going to be the first 1 or 2 or 3 times that you're not going to be nervous. This is something that comes with skill, just like everything else, so I'm not going to buy the 1 or 2 times, I made a mistake and tried to, in my case, tell the judge, that like this was kind of like my first rodeo with the drug game. And that's where I messed up, because you don't realize what you telling these people, you know what I mean? That she checked my ass on that shit too, you know what I mean? But they know it. No, she wasn't buying it at all, man. But I never had a drug case ever in my life, so I'm thinking I was gonna try to play the role like, I'm new to this and shit. She's big if you don't get up out of here with that bullshit. But yeah, so it takes multiple. My whole point was to take multiple times in order to get that comfortable.
Well, I definitely believe in the mental illness of Eric Holder. I listened to all these diagnoses. I listened to the father's letter. He had electrotherapy on his brain. He's been through a whole lot of different mental facilities over the years. So I wonder if that even has an impact on why he's got a 2039 release date. But hey, y'all, he's going to be eligible for parole in 16 years. All right, I wanted to move on to we got to at least talk about Donald Trump, President Donald Trump being indicted. I believe he's the first former president ever charged. I do remember Nixon was in some trouble back in 1972 or 73. But what's your feelings on Donald Trump being charged? It seems like the country split on it.
I'm split on it too. I think it's some bullshit. Just to be honest with you, you know what I mean. I'm not sitting here saying I'm a Trump supporter. I just see it for what it is. I really believe it's a. I'm not gonna call it a witch hunt. Y'all know what he did with Stormy Daniels way back when he did it. This is no new information to y'all. Y'all didn't think the guy was gonna win last time. Now that he's running again, you guys are gonna make sure that he don't. Even if you guys tarnish his name or send him through this trial all the way till the election is over and then turn around and give him a slap on the wrist or something like that. But I really think it's a move, a political move to stop him from running again. That's what I truly believe, because you guys knew what he did. You guys knew all the facts. It's no new facts came out. You guys want to bring the facts out now, but I believe it's a railroad, for him not to run again. That's what I really believe.
You know what? I'm gonna have to agree with you on that. I feel those 34 counts that he was charged with, they're all minor. Some of them are what we call in California wobblers. They can be considered misdemeanors, or felonies. So it's just bizarre, because in the history of presidents, even our most recent presidents, I'm aware of some of our recent presidents committing even more serious crimes than what was outlined in this indictment against Trump. Like, for example, Bill Clinton. I know Bill Clinton committed all kind of gangster crimes.
Right.
I believe he might have been involved in Vince Foster's murder. They say it was a suicide, but all experts say that there was no way Vince Foster. That was his, I think his legal consultant in the White House. Vince Foster was killed. I believe Ron Brown was killed. Ron Brown was the brother that was the Secretary of Transportation, I believe. And even with George Bush II, this dude waged a war against Iraq for WMDs that they never found or existed.
No doubt. And, not to mention, Hillary wasn't president, but her mishandling of Benghazi and all those emails that was hid and those things. I just think those crimes was a lot, harder than what y'all trying to accuse him of, paying a stripper under the table or some stuff, which y'all already knew. So at the end of the day, like I said, I believe I'm not going to use his term and say witch hunt, but because it's something there, but at the same time I think it's petty and minute, and it's a move to not to let him back in there again, because they must be feeling that he got action. But the way Joe Biden is running the country, a lot of people is not happy with it. And I believe that the Democrats even won't get back in there no matter who run on the Republican side.
Yeah, you're definitely right about Hilary Clinton and Benghazi, because what she did there definitely qualifies for high crimes and misdemeanors, and she was never charged.
No doubt.
Yeah, it's just bizarre, because if we're going to charge president, let's have some serious charges. I agree with you. It seems like it's just it's all theatrics. It's all performative, and it's just entertaining. It's just to entertain us. I don't think this guy's ever going to sit in jail for one single day, and he might actually win the presidency while he's facing these charges, which would be bizarre if he actually.
That'd be crazy. Yeah, that'd be nuts. Yeah.
All right, and then real quickly, let's pivot into these Capitol rioters, man. We got to tap in with these Capitol rioters. Hey, some of these Capitol rioters actually believe that they could escape the prosecution. About 6 of these guys have become fugitives. Literally, they're fugitives of the law.
No doubt, but hey, like you said, they gonna try their hand, man. They tried their hand with the Capitol. They wasn't scared to do that, so they not scared to, imitate the gingerbread man. They gonna say, "Catch me when you can," man. So hey, I ain't mad at them, man. Shit, who want to go sit in the jail? Who want to run through a trial where they seeing everybody getting convicted on? So they gonna try their hand.
Don't you think that you make it worse for you when you decide not only are you facing the charges that you're facing, but now you're going to look at additional offenses or additional charges when you decide to become a fugitive of the law?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. I've seen a lot of people that was fugitives of the law. They didn't get no hell of a extra time. You know what I mean? Some of them just don't give a shit. If they didn't give a shit about storming the Capitol, Alex, you got to think about how much they care about, maybe getting an extra year or two or something of that nature, So, like I say, I'm not mad at them. Who wants to go to jail? At this point, they haven't really wasted. They haven't had their trial proceedings, and while they were on trial, fled. You know what I mean? So they didn't cost the government too much money yet by picking a jury and going through all the proceedings, and then they left. They were basically just skipped bail. Basically, we got a lot of people to do that. Only thing about skipping bail or running out how they ran out. If they ever do get caught, they'll never be eligible to go to a camp, a minimum security institution, because when you have a absconding or whatever you want to call it, jump bail, that makes you not eligible for a minimum security institution.
So they automatically have to go to at least a medium.
A low. They can go to a low security, but the low security is still gated and ran like, anything else. They won't be able to have that freedom like at a camp. Like some of these Capitol rioters are actually going to land up in the camp, so where they can live good and, not all the pressure, no pressure really. And, do your time just easier. But these guys are skipped out. And then some of them, especially if any of them ex-military or anything like that, I believe they can go without being found. I believe it's not that hard. It's hard, but it's not that hard.
Well, this guy here, Joseph Hutchinson, there's a guy named Jonathan Pollock, and then I guess Olivia Michelle Pollock. I'm not sure if that's his wife or sister. Mm-hmm. They've all fled, and these were people that were out on bail that had ankle monitoring, and then they decided to cut those monitors off and escape. And I'm assuming cutting off your ankle monitoring is a crime in itself, a federal offense right there.
No doubt, but when you get in court and they get to adding up all these this time, some of that stuff overlaps each other, so the time that they're gonna run them with a 4-year sentence, they might get 2 for cutting off the ankle monitor, running concurrent, so some of the stuff be seem like it's worse than what it really be, and it don't be.
Yeah. Okay. And then I want to mention one more of the rioters that fled. Evan Newman. This guy actually not only fled prosecution, this dude decided to leave the country. He went to Italy. First, he sold his house, 1.3 million. He sold his house for 1.3 million. I don't know how much of that he got to keep because he probably still owed on the loan, but let's assume he had at least half of that. Then he fled to Italy, then went to Belarus, and he received political asylum from the nation of Belarus. And he told the country there that if he was sent to the United States, he would be tortured. What kind of drama is that?
Well, it all depends if they believed him or not, and don't get me wrong, there's people that come over to the US and they do the same thing, Alex. So if he boss up on that move and get away with it, man, I ain't mad at him for finding a loophole per se in the system. That's one thing I can't hate on the dude for finding a loophole, but if he get away with that one, man, shit, more power to him. Only thing about it, the US, they so tricky, man. They don't give a damn about, they'll send somebody over there to get you, man, but they may not care enough to put those kind of resources behind his situation. But he better not bring his ass back.
Yeah, he can never step foot on U.S. soil. But I mean, he was only probably going to face 2 years, 3 years in prison. This dude sold his house, fled the country, and now he's going to live in Belarus for the rest of his life. That's crazy, man.
Yeah, no doubt. But some of these people really want to get out of here anyway, and I guess he found the perfect reason, man. Some people don't want to do a day, Alex. That's why so much snitching going on out there.
Oh yeah, no doubt, man. I just got off of a case, man, where a cousin snitched against another cousin.
Man.
And it was bizarre. And actually the prosecutor was asking me questions about what's your opinions on snitching? Like you're against snitching. He asked me these questions in front of the jury. Aren't you against snitching? And
That's
I was
crazy.
like, yeah. And I was I had to explain I said we're all against snitching. I said it's against most Americans grow up not tattletaling. You learn from your parents. We don't even approve it in law enforcement. We don't approve it in the workplace environment. Cops don't snitch on each other.
Right.
But his questions were trying to isolate it as if this is just a gang thing, So I was trying to let the jury know that snitching is frowned upon in all segments of society.
In all segments, yeah.
Yeah, but I had this case where the cousin from Main Street was snitching against a cousin from East Coast, man. But yeah, the snitching is very prevalent, and I guess that's why some people do what they do. But I can't imagine this guy living the rest of his life in Belarus. It's just bizarre. All right, I wanted to ask you a question about 21 years ago this week. Buntry was shot and killed at the gas station over there on Atlantic and Rosecrans, man. And I just wanted to get some thoughts on as we reflect on losing a dude that you basically grew up with, man. It's been 21 years, which is kind of crazy that this happened 21 years ago.
No doubt that 21 years flew by. You know what I mean? I remember like shit, it was yesterday. You know what I mean? And Buntry was definitely a good homie, and definitely a general over there on the east side. Definitely a staple. The mob gang general. You know what I mean? And had a lot of love for Buntry. So like I said, I remember like it was yesterday because it happened over right there in my neighborhood and at the Shell gas station, me and Buntry happened to have the same kind of trucks back then. We had black Denali's, and I'll never forget, when it happened, I was getting a lot of calls, because for one, it was right there in the hood, and for two, I had the same kind of truck, so that's even how I learned how it happened, But like I said, I got to spend a lot of time with Buntry and hung out at his pad. He took me to concerts and he had a genuine love for me, you know what I mean? And I had the same, and like a lot of big homies over there, I miss dude, man. I didn't realize it was 21 years though, man.
Yeah, that was in April of 2020. I'm sorry, April of 2002. Yeah, 02. 02. And that was just like what was that? A couple years before you got picked up by the feds, right? Just 2 years.
Nah, no doubt. You know what I mean? And like I say, I sit at Buntry kitchen table, you know what I mean? And ate food out of his refrigerator. And, we didn't laugh, we didn't drink. When I had the nightclub, the Red Velvet, Buntry was one of my supporters, man. He come through and, and the thing about the east side, man, it was so vicious over there that, you rarely see homies laugh and smile. When I had the Red Velvet, I seen a lot of homies with smiles on their face. I seen a lot of laughter. I seen a lot of homies be able to let whatever they got going in the hood, let it get out their mind for a second and enjoy the night, So like I say, man, dude was one of my supporters, man, and everything I did, man. So I ain't had nothing but a lot of love for Buntry, real big homie,
Yeah, man. The years be flying by. I remember when it happened, and it's just it's so crazy. This happened in 2002. My daughter was born in 2001, a year before, and it's just crazy, like how time just seems to be moving faster and faster each year that passes. But yeah, 21 years ago this week, man. we lost, bro. And
Well, Well, I
go ahead.
definitely want to say to a son, little Buntry and little Alton, and the rest of his kids, his sister and all those things, brothers, Timmy Rue, and man, like I say, rest in peace to the homie, man, and we lost a good one when we lost Buntry, we lost a real homie, amongst others that we lost around that time, but Buntry was definitely, a staple on that east side, man. Much love, major respect.
And the last thing I want to say about this before we move on is that it was funny to hear people opining on who killed him on the internet. It's really it's bothersome to me that people will speak about open cases so comfortably on the internet. And I know a lot of people watch the interviews and watch the videos, but now people who are opining about it, they're not saying they're not saying names anymore. And I think that we need to have a certain standard when we talk about things like this. Open cases, homicides, pointing the fingers at people because you think they went to prison, you think they got a life sentence, and then all of a sudden they're home. That has an impact on people, whether they're innocent or not. They haven't been charged, nobody's been to prison, and just publicly putting people's names and pointing fingers regarding open cases is, I think, a little irresponsible. So I hope we can do better when we talk about these cases. And we're going to pivot into a case right now. The BTB Savage dude, a Texas rapper who was gunned down.
Right.
He was gunned down a few days after he did an interview where he detailed killing a person in self-defense. And this happened in San Antonio, but he got killed in Houston.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've really been tapping in on some of the recklessness of talking about some of this gangster stuff on the internet.
No doubt, you know what I mean? I tap into it all the time, and it's a shame that, for views and shit and for clicks and for likes and shit like that, people just jump out there and say anything, have any kind of narrative, without having, the facts, like you were speaking on earlier, so many people that's quick to say somebody did something, but if you wasn't there, you don't know who did what or who had something to do with it. Sometimes I hear things on the internet and I know it's 100% false, but that's the narrative people run with. But this guy right here, his family asked him not to speak about it, for the sake of the family and for the sake of the family of the guy that was killed. Don't speak about the dude you killed, but for a few dollars and his homeboys pumping him up and we can get, clout, we can get clicks, we can get views, man, take that little change, man, and do them interviews. And that's what he did, and he went on a certain platform, a big one, and spoke on it, and 4 days later, somebody knocked him down. So, I really believe that had he not spoke on it or was speaking on it, publicly, he may still be around.
Yeah, most definitely. And I have to, I normally don't mention this dude, but we got to mention him. It's Vlad TV. And I'm almost certain that Vlad paid this guy, provided an incentive for him to want to talk about this story, because this guy probably didn't want to talk about it, but then Vlad will throw you $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, and once you do that, once you accept the money, now you're compelled to tell this story, which BTB Savage did, and it could have been the story that got him killed.
No doubt. I mean, to be honest with you, I gotta agree with you on that. You know what I mean? And at the same time, that's the one thing about these dudes, that, like you say, to get on these platforms, and let the money or let the ego or let the, the cloud or whatever people want to call it, have you come talk about some shit that, you shouldn't be. I mean, at the end of the day, we do speak on things that's in the news. We speak on people we know. We speak on certain shit. But when they get to talk about a crime, you know what I mean? And a specific person that did it, even if it's myself, it's certain shit that you just got to leave alone and let go, and don't speak on, and in this situation, he went on there, like you say, this on a couple of platforms, but once he got to Vlad, one of the biggest in the country, it was magnified, and it could looked at as taunting. It could have looked at as bragging. It could have looked at in many ways, man, and somebody wasn't feeling it, so I'm not going to sit here and 100% say, Vlad egged him on to get himself killed, but at the same time, sometimes when interviewer asking these questions, you as a man got to be you responsible for what come out your mouth, and sometimes you have to, not speak on certain things. So, it's unfortunately, man, that this dude that got knocked down, a few days after that interview aired. That's crazy.
Hey, I want to ask you about the interview. I'm sorry. The self-defense shooting that BTB Savage was a part of. Him and his girlfriend killed a guy, and they were cleared of it. That happened in San Antonio. He gets gunned down in Houston, which is like 3.5 hours away. Do you think that the distance of these two cities, which are both in Texas, 3.5 hours away, it's like from going from LA to Vegas. Do you think that the distance could mean that it didn't have anything to do with what happened in San Antonio, or the distance doesn't matter?
Well, I can say and sit here and, for me to be on record speaking with you, you know what I mean? Like I said, I can't say that I'm 100% sure that that's how it went. It could have just been somebody randomly smacked him on something else, cut him off on the road. So you're 100% right that it really could be something else. It is a little ironic that after he went on Vlad that, this dude get knocked down for talking about killing a man, but you got to understand Vegas and LA ain't that far. San Antonio and Houston is not that far either. I got a cousin in Vegas that'll knock you out your boots if I called him and say you was there. You know what I mean? So somebody can do the same from San Antonio to Houston, so that's not a long enough distance, for you not to be touched, and it's the perfect place to touch you because it's not right here in the town. So you do got some kind of what the police may think is a whole something else, which it really could be, but it could be throwing the police off just based on, it's in a totally different demographics of where you killed a man at. So like I say, man, it's just unfortunate that went like that when his parents, it was on record that his parents asked him not to speak about it. And he, declined to take their advice, went on there speaking about it, man. And, unfortunately, for whatever reason, somebody knocked him down.
Yeah. You were saying that earlier that you as the interviewee, the guy that's telling the story, has to be responsible also, right? He's got to be able to know what to say, know what not to say, right?
True, but at the same time, as an interviewer, you know what I mean? You got to understand, and Vlad got to be smart enough to know that some of these questions you ask him, man, can also double back and incriminate a dude. If he say something different from what he said in the police report, something different than what he said at the police station in order to exonerate him, to make him his self-defense stand, don't be up there asking you some questions that can double back and make them, start thinking maybe that this wasn't completely self-defense or things of this nature. So it's on both of them. It's responsibility on both of them, but just that certain shit shouldn't have even been discussed, but the only thing about it, what I can appreciate is he was talking about himself. So he wasn't talking about two other dudes. So he wasn't up there, like you say, basically snitching, but he was telling a story, and, a story reflected, could have reflected on his demise,
Yeah, but part of those interviews that Vlad does, he's paying. So once he pays a guy, so for example, if you went on Vlad FG and he paid you, he's going to want you to talk about certain things that you might not want to talk about, but because you're getting paid like $5,000,
you can't say no. Yeah,
you can't say no. Now you're obligated.
Right. No, you got 100. Yeah, hell of a point right there. Yeah, hell of a point. Yeah.
So I think he knows that if he just sat there with B2B Savage, the interview might not even want to go in that direction. And we all know the reason why he's interviewing him in the first place is because he got off on self-defense, killing a man. So the way around that, the way to get a grown man to say things he don't want to say is dangle a carrot in front of him. And whether that's $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, that's how these interviews in today's social media climate on YouTube are getting done. And Vlad is not the only platform that's doing this. I know about two or three other
I ain't
platforms.
gonna say I ain't gonna just point at him, but But like you say, dudes got to be responsible before they go sit down to talk about you got to damn near be ready for anything that somebody's paying you for an interview, because they gonna come with all the juicy shit. They gonna ask you about everything that you haven't been talking about and all the shit that you may have been avoiding talking about. They gonna ask you all that shit once they slide that money to you. I damn near would do the same thing, but I wouldn't try to get a dude to incriminate himself or nobody else in a crime just to get the, like you say, the views, and that's something that, big money out there, some of these bigger platforms, they don't give a damn. They want the views because they know people want to know. So unfortunately, this kid lost his life.
And maybe BTB Savage and his little circle of friends felt he was comfortable to talk about it because the people that him and his girlfriend killed were trying to rob him. So he feels like, I guess he was the victim. They shot and killed. I believe the girl was the one that actually pulled the trigger, and killed the person that was robbing them. But even though you were the victim in a attempted robbery, just from my perspective, I don't want to talk about that person that I just killed. It's just because that person has a family. You don't know if that person's brothers is gangsters, or uncles,
No doubt.
So,
no doubt.
I think it's just a bad look all the way around. And then to pay somebody to talk about something that is an irresponsible topic to talk about, I think that's just we're hitting the bottoms now. We're at an all-time low in content creation, or whatever you want to call it now, on YouTube. We're just at an all-time low. We cannot create just good stories that don't incriminate people, that don't talk about murder, that don't talk about the victims' families the way that people are wanting to hear. It just seems like we're going in this whole nother direction, and it's actually quite ugly to me.
No doubt. But we living in a society right now where you got extreme sports, you got extreme this, you got extreme that. So they want to see extreme content. Think about it. If you go to YouTube and you click on alligator eating a cheetah, it's gonna have 4 million views. You know what I mean? So you have to understand that this is the stuff people want to hear. The juicier the better. They're gonna click in on it. I try to be responsible when I talk. People say, man, F you, you choose your words, carry you motherfucking right. I do. You know what I mean? And it ain't because of the police can come do nothing to me. You know what I mean? But I'm also, thinking of the person who we talking about. If it's a crime that was committed, we can reread what we saw in the news or give you a small insight on what a person may have been thinking. But these dudes is coming on there just blatantly saying, my boy Mike, when he shot him 2 times, and you could not be charged or criminally, but at the same time, you're still giving up some information that not always good to give up, so.
I can imagine if you went on one of these bigger platforms that paid you, they're going to be asking you about death row. They want to ask you about Suge Knight, and they probably would even be bold enough to ask you, how do you think Buntry got killed? Who do you think did it? That's
exactly.
Question. That's a real question that you would be asked if you went on some of these platforms.
And those are the things that people want to hear. They want to know. You know what I mean? And one thing about it, 2 things were certain. They know FG off that east side, man. And I get DMs and shit all the time, man. We know you holding back, man. Tell us some of that shit, man. I'm definitely holding back, but at the same time, I got to be responsible. That's what kind of dude I am. That's how I got to be stand up. I give you a little something now and then, but at the same time, I got to be responsible.
Okay, well, BTB Savage's real name is Daryl Gentry. He was shot and killed in Houston while he was driving in his Mercedes, and Houston police are saying that this shooting was definitely targeted. So it wasn't like a random shooting, and they put targeted in quotes. And I guess the likely targeting is based on what happened in San Antonio, right? I'm almost like 90% convinced that the targeting of that homicide in Houston is related to San Antonio. I could be 10% wrong, but I'm a stand on that 90%.
I always think the police know more than what people think they know. I believe for them to use the term targeting, they may know a little something. He could have got some text message threats or something like that. He could have got some DMs in his Instagram saying, "Hey, bro, leave that shit alone. We gonna touch you up. You know what I mean? They couldn't know something more than we do for them to even go on record and use that term, Alex. You know, so I believe that, you know, by them doing that, they know a little something we don't know.
Yeah, definitely. And according to the Houston KNS5.com, they're saying that Gentry, the rapper, BTB Savage, allowed another rapper and that man's uncle, later identified as Omar Richardson, into his apartment for a recording session. And then this guy Richardson pulled a gun and attempted to rob Gentry. And that's when him and his girlfriend, I guess they beat him to the punch. They got into a tussle. And then Gentry's girlfriend shot Richardson in the back. So that's how it pretty much went down in San Antonio.
Hey man, it didn't went down like that so many other times before where the robber don't go in there and get what he going to get. You know, everybody's not, pleased with being robbed. Everybody not laying down on robberies. You know, some people risk their own life, for the simple possessions that somebody is trying to take from them, and I'm not judging or knocking them on that, but some people ain't gonna lay down, so this dude apparently, went in there and got his head knocked in, trying to rob somebody. And, when you go try to take somebody else's shit, sometimes this happens, so, hey man, the guy beat it. He got off. It wasn't enough for him. He wanted to talk about it. And unfortunately, he lost his life.
Yeah, he should have just kept his mouth shut on it. And I'm gonna put a link to this article in the show notes from KENS5.com. But I just want to read just a couple more parts here. It said after the part where they got into a tussle over the gun, this article actually says Gentry told DJ Vlad that he refused to take Richardson to the hospital. And then it says San Antonio police did not press charges against Gentry and his girlfriend. And then it says he was just straight soft, like weak, Gentry said in the interview, which was so far garnered more than 2 million views. Then he said, I went to sleep good as hell the next day and was happy as hell too. So in this interview, these quotes that are in this article, it seems as if he's trying to rub it in that he got away with this. He didn't take the dude to the hospital. And then it says here, are you at all concerned that his people are going to try to come back? DJ Vlad asked. They for sure might do what they might do, Gentry said, but I'm going to get active. That's all it is. It is what it is. And these are the things you just don't want to be saying on the internet, in my opinion.
Right. No doubt. You're 100% right about that.
And then it says here that Gentry, BTB Savage, posed for pictures in front of the apartment's blood-stained walls. The rapper posted the images to Twitter an hour before the attackers shot him.
Damn, that's crazy.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's almost, you cannot ignore him getting murdered in Houston has something to do with this incident in San Antonio. And I just believe that Gentry, BTB Savage, just went about it all wrong. And even the platform that interviewed him has to take a certain amount of responsibility because they paid this man to tell this story in such an offensive and hurtful way.
No doubt. You know what I mean? Like I said, I agree with you all the way around on that. There's a few irresponsible parties in that shit. But posting pictures with the bloodstained wall and the posting them on Twitter. And, this is clearly a move that the boy shouldn't have, done, or even not right now. Say if it was a year from now and you did something, but this is fresh so yeah, some of these dots could connect to, you was targeted, bro.
It's very fresh. This happened in February.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's very fresh. And I was gonna say that maybe if some years had passed, maybe you can talk about it. But I would even say even after 5 years, 10 years, you just might not want to talk about it. And I'll give you one example. I interviewed a guy named Bandit, Tony Alvarado, who wrote a book about his life in the gang and his hood getting green lighted by the Mexican mafia back in 1992, 93, 94. So what's that? 30 years ago, right?
Right.
So he does an interview with me. This is 30 years ago. He's talking about what happened. And around September, October, the brother got shot 10 times in front of his house.
Yeah, that's wild. Like you say, sometimes, you could bring up old memories, bring up old wounds. Sometimes people forget, and then you remind them, you know, and when you remind them, man, you know, depending on what kind of day they had or what they feeling at the moment or what they situation is where they can just come reach out and touch you, they will, you know, so it definitely can happen, you know. So some like that's why I go back to say some shit, you know, you don't speak on, you know, some shit you have, you know, but he probably just felt he can go tell the stories 30 years later. You know, people do it all the time. You know what I mean? So I'm not sure if that connects, the shooting was connected with what he said on your interview, but at the same time, he definitely was hit, you know, a bunch of times, you know, and it's highly likely that it could come from something that he said in his book or elsewhere.
Yeah, I think he you know, talking about being greenlit is a very sensitive topic in the Latino gang culture. And even though 30 years have I thought the 30 years have passed was enough time to, you know, tell his story. But, you know, he wrote his book. He told his story. He reached out to me. I did his first interview. But then after he did the interview with me, he did about 5 or 6 more interviews.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some, you know, some people were feeling a certain kind of way. Like, this guy is going all over the internet telling his story, which I feel like he has every right to, but it's an example of how people don't forget 30
No
years
doubt.
later.
No doubt. Shit.
Yeah. Any last points on that before we move on to this last I think we got one more topic.
Yeah, no, let's move on to the next one.
Okay, I wanted to we talked about the Tekashi69 beating.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about it in the context of Lord Jamar saying it was all staged and it was fake, and you know he did this for publicity and for attention. And we called the assault real last episode, but we kind of like left it open that there was a small possibility that it was fake, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was a small possibility that Lord Jamar was correct, but now that they've arrested 3 people. Now that they've charged 3 guys with assault, I believe 2 of the guys are father and son. There's no way on God's green earth that this assault was fake. This was 100% real. And I'm sorry, Lord Jamar. You know, I love your platform. I tap in with you often, but you are 1,000% wrong on this. What say you on this, FG?
Well, you know, it's just crazy, man, how they arrested these 3 dudes, man, you know, and of course, you know, of course, they had it on video. If they were members of that gym, it wasn't hard to go back and, you know, get video footage from the gym and, you know, run their names and things of that nature, you know. But at the end of the day, you know, I'm thinking, you know, you still got an assault case. And even though it was on video, I'm almost certain that they would have to call Tekashi69 to come get on the stand, you know. So I'm waiting to see if he goes snitch again. You know what I mean? And go get on the stand and make statements about these dudes, you know, and you know, he get up on the stand again. You know, it's I mean, you know, I guess people don't give a fuck nowadays. You know, they so many rat lovers out here nowadays. But at the same time, I'm suspecting he would at least have to go get on the stand again in this assault. What you think?
Absolutely. They arrested Rafael Medina, who's 43 years old, Rafael Medina Jr. They arrested Octavious Medina, 23. That's the father and son.
Mm-hmm.
And then they arrested a third dude, Anthony Maldonado, 25. And if you look at the video, it's only 2 people. So I guess the camera person is part of it as well. And they were arrested by Palm Beach County sheriffs. And yeah, in order for this case to go forward, they would need the cooperation of Tekashi69, I'm assuming. But because it's on video, you know, I noticed it in a couple of California cases, you don't necessarily have to have the victim there for a prosecution.
Yeah, but at the same time, on most cases, they're gonna call every witness they can call. You know, and what makes it so different in this case? Yeah, you can, but at the same time, well, prosecution don't want his case airtight. You know,
definitely, I agree that they'll want him, but I think because it's all on camera, there's a chance that they could prosecute without him. I actually had a case once where this guy got charged with an attempted murder, and the victim was a John Doe. It was on camera, but they never got the victim. He left and they never found out who he was, but they still charged the dude with shooting at a guy that survived the shooting, that left the scene of the crime and was never found out who he was. So they charged this dude with attempted murder on a John Doe, which is I thought was crazy, but they do it here in California.
No, they do it, and they can do it. I'm not disagreeing with you on that point. I'm just saying, when the assault victim is right there in plain clear view, you know what I mean. I don't have them having no discretion on not having him come in. If nothing else, he made statements at some point. They've contacted him at some point, and he made statements. He said something. You know, is he willing to go to court and say, no, I don't think these are three dudes that did it? Are you that gangster? But I mean, I'm clearly probably not, but that's what a real motherfucker would do in a situation where he got rushed, and they got caught. Bro, you gonna go in there and say, nah, I ain't never seen these three dudes in my life, and they know you lying, but that ain't the point. And if they prosecute them without your testimony, that's a whole nother thing. But you went in there and said, man, I ain't never seen these three dudes a day in my life. I don't think these the guys. That's what you would have to do. I mean, you already a rat, so it don't matter. But at the same time, that's what a real thug would do, in a situation like that, where the situation was caught on camera. You were caught by the cameras, and now I'm in court as well on an assault on me. You know what I mean? I'm look the judge in his eye, look the prosecutor in his eye and telling me I ain't never seen these dudes a day in my life. So I'm certain that at some point on paper, even if he doesn't get up on the stand, he's going to make a statement, and those statements are going to get out, he don't care, but those are the facts of it, so I'm hoping in some way, some slight form, these dudes, slide through, and with some easy, but that's the reality of it.
Well, they're charging all three of these guys with not only the assault on Tekashi69, but they threw in a robbery charge, which I was unaware of him getting robbed of anything, but I guess they're just trying to put the maximum charges they can on these three guys. But I was completely unaware of any robbery that took place.
I mean, a wristband could have fell off the dude and they picked it up and they gonna charge him with robbery, man. That's what they gonna do. Not to mention, this dude is a federal witness. He probably, got some pull over there when it comes to, this type of shit. He probably called a favor in. Listen, man, leave me out of it, but these dudes need to get booked, so to deter the next dude from beating me up. Cause I want to go out here and be able to talk shit and be in public and do all this without somebody trying to do something to me. So make an example out these dudes so won't nobody else try it. Thing about society is, thing about America, thing about, the streets is police don't deter them from keep trying it. You know what I mean? So how many times or how many passes he gonna get for getting somebody locked up? I don't know. But at the end of the day, man, you already know how I feel about it.
Yeah. So if he keeps it gangster in this case, they bring him into court and he says, I don't even remember any of these guys. Is he redeemed in your eyes from what he did in the previous federal case?
No, he's not at all. That's why I said half-ass don't matter,
Yeah.
But at the same time, maybe you learn something. It'll show me that you learned something. It won't exonerate you in my eyes, but it'll show you, what society or people or what I did, on my first get down was clearly, wasn't right, I'm gonna do it different next time, so no, I won't clear him, nothing like that, but it will show that he's learned because he's still out here rapping. He's still out here in these streets. He's still talking high power shit,
Yeah.
and if you wasn't in that capacity, but in this capacity, bro, I mean, how many times you just gonna keep getting up there ratting on people and people gonna keep fucking with you?
Yeah. Well, we know for a fact now that this assault was not fake. He was actually taken to the hospital. He was treated for his injuries. He had multiple cuts on his face, and I just find it fascinating that people will believe some sort of conspiracy theory that has no proof, no evidence, baseless, that this was fake in the first place.
Yeah, Alex, but we done seen so much fake shit, man, that I get it. I do get it. I do understand. I do, I'm not opposed to somebody, thinking that, some shit just faulty, because some shit is. Everybody's entitled to their opinion, and like I say, I wasn't 100% clear that it wasn't, you know what I mean? I just felt that it, this one was, but at the same time, man, I ain't gonna lie, I can't knock nobody for having their beliefs and, or what they feel, or even if they just clown and talking shit, we gonna get that, but at the end of the day, on a lot of times, whether it's now, whether it's later, truth gonna come out, facts gonna come out, especially in today's era with all the social media and, get police reports you can get and the things we can get in our own hands, give it a little time, shit gonna come out,
Well, yeah, there's a lot of fake stuff going on, but when I watched this video, when I watched his reaction to it, and I saw the blood trickling down his face, and I saw how he walked out of there, and I saw the embarrassment on his face. I saw his expressions, things that you cannot fake.
Right. I got you on that point.
Thinking logically, how can you conclude that this whole entire altercation that took place in the bathroom of the gym was all scripted and fake? I just find it to me, you have to really be on some like conspiratorial nutcase philosophy if you believe that was completely fake. I understand there's a lot of fake stuff going on, but if you got a common sense, you saw all of the things that took place, you knew that was a real assault.
No, I feel you.
Real quick, you made me think about what Orlando Anderson did back in the day when he tried to help Suge Knight's probation hearing in court, where they brought him into court and they said, wasn't Suge Knight and all them Pyrus beating your ass? And he was like, nah, Suge Knight was actually trying to help me.
Yeah.
Even though they did pay him to say that, but he was willing to go up there and try. What's crazy, he was willing there to try to exonerate a rival, an enemy at that, on some gangster shit.
No doubt, and like you say, yeah, he might have been, monetary compensated, but at the same time, the money could have been not for him getting up there doing it, but just for his situation where shit, maybe he missed something he was doing that day that was gonna make him some money. So you got to compensate for that. For me, even to take off, work or something to come do this, so the money could have been for a whole separate something else. But at the same time, he definitely got up there, man, and tried to keep it as gangster as he could, but I don't think they was buying it, Alex.
Nah, it didn't work. They gave him a 9-year parole violation for
one
a
kick, man, for a kick, man, 9-year kick, man, yeah.
And it goes to show you how dirty Attorney Kenner was back in the day, because I believe they paid Orlando either 30 or 40 racks to come up there and say what he said. And the lawyer was behind that all the way.
No doubt.
It's unfortunate where lawyers like Kenner have been doing this stuff for years, but you get a brother like Matthew Fletcher, who did something very minor, and he loses his license forever, for the rest of his life. He can't practice law anymore. And I think that goes to David Kenner's white privilege. I've heard so many dirty things that Kenner's done over the years, and nothing's ever happened to his career as an attorney.
Mm-hmm.
But any last thoughts, man, before we wrap this up?
Nah, you know what I mean? I know we had a couple other topics that I had wanted to get to, man, but sometimes time be moving so fast when we get on the road, man. But we definitely gonna have to come back and double back on them other two topics, man. Because what was she? She was a part of the police union, or she was part of the
a grandmother / police union executive,
yeah, who was moving work, man. We gonna definitely have to come back and tap in on that, bro, for sure.
We'll tap in on that next week, and we'll put her picture on the Instagram page at street.an.scholars. Older white lady who was a grandmother was recently charged with peddling fentanyl, man. So where can the people tap in with you at, man?
Man, come over there on Instagram, man. I'm over there at FGeneral1 on Instagram. I got some good things coming down the pipe on FG Unleashed on YouTube. So tap in over there, and that's where I'm at, Alex, right here on Streets and Scholars Instagram page, and check us out, man.
And we're going to have to read some comments and questions. I'm sure you get a lot of them in your DM. Maybe next week we'll read a couple of those. Because sometimes the people want some of these questions answered if there's some questions you're comfortable with addressing.
No doubt. They in my DMs, man. They sending me, articles and different things that truly worthy of being discussed, man. So we do need to get to some of that. We may dedicate one of these shows to just everything that's on our Instagram and the Streets and Scholars Instagrams, man, and address some of the people that's tapping in with us, because like you say, they are the listeners. So I think we need to at least address some or respond to some of them.
And if you're listening from around the world, you can go to the Apple page. If you're listening using Apple Podcasts, you could leave us a rating and a review, and you could even ask a question on the Apple Podcast platform. And if you're listening to us on iHeart, Google, Spotify, or any of the other platforms, make sure you're following Streets and Scholars. And you can find me at Alex Alonso 101. You can send me a message, a DM. You could even send me an email if you want. Go to streetgangs.com, click on the contact link, and my email address is there. And thanks for tapping in with another fire episode of Streets and Scholars.